Easy answers are a sweet poison. You are here for the dangerous truth. This is Questions Have Power. I am the Curator. You have been granted access to the scholarly sanctum. Here, you are not a viewer. You are a juror. Weigh the evidence. Prepare your verdict. I will return to interrogate the silence before the record is sealed. The investigation is open.
Case GN-03.14 is now in session inside the scholarly sanctum. The subject is the curse, the conflict. Is Genesis chapter 3 a promise or a prison? Exhibit A. The status. Juror, distinguish between a biological outcome and a legal sentence. Do not accept the punishment simply because the creature is repulsive. Dr. Finch, the court demands you substantiate the justice of this verdict without relying on the creature's physical form as proof of guilt. Proceed.
The text demands we accept the severity of the divine order. The curse is an act of judicial humiliation. I direct your attention to the evidence board. We must analyze the specific legal category applied to the criminal. The text uses the specific Hebrew term for cursed, but notice the comparison. Cursed above all cattle. This is a biological demotion. The serpent, who arrogantly claimed to possess secret knowledge, is stripped of his standing. He is not exiled to a dark dimension. He is forced into the dirt, lower than the livestock. This proves the Creator's mastery. He does not need to wage cosmic war against the rebel. He simply degrades its biology. The sentence turns a would-be god into a worm.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Dr. Vance, you will now dissect this position. You have 3 minutes.
Dr. Finch sees a worm. I see a warlord in exile. If we analyze the cognate evidence from the ancient Near East, this is not about livestock. It is about jurisdiction. I direct your attention to the evidence board. We must look at what cursed actually means in the context of a throne room. In the ancient Semitic context, to be cursed in this manner is to be banned from the clan. It is an expulsion from the system of life. God is not turning a snake into a reptile. He is casting a shining one out of the divine council and binding him to the earth. This is a containment protocol. The belly is not just anatomy, it is the uniform of a prisoner. The ancient cognate texts describe the underworld specifically as the house of dust, the land of no return. The serpent is not demoted to an animal. He is sentenced to house arrest in the physical realm.
The initial cases for Exhibit A have been presented. The advocates will now engage in a 4-minute scholarly interchange. Dr. Vance, you have indicted the traditional defense. Initiate the interchange.
Dr. Finch, you are asking the jury to believe that the God of the universe is angry at a reptile. That is absurd. You are sanitizing the war. The curse is a military blockade. God is trapping the usurper in the physical realm so it cannot return to the council. This is not biology, it is the blueprint of a prison.
It is not a prison, Dr. Vance. It is a mirror. The punishment fits the crime. The serpent tried to rise above God, so God forces him to crawl below the beasts. It is poetic justice. By stripping the shining one of his limbs, his upright stature, God is physically writing the verdict of failure onto his body for eternity.
You call it poetic justice. I call it dangerous proximity. If God simply wanted to punish him, he could have annihilated him. Instead, he binds him to the earth, right next to the humans the serpent just corrupted. This is not a solution, Alistair. This is locking the murderer in the house with the victims.
He is not locked in the house. He is underfoot. That is the crucial distinction. The degradation destroys his authority. A creature that must slither in the dirt has lost the right to speak from the throne. God is protecting humanity by visually identifying the enemy as low.
And yet, this low creature is still given free rein to strike. You are ignoring the tactical reality. By casting him down to the earth, God has effectively made the serpent the prince of this world. You call it a demotion, I call it an installation.
He is the prince of this world, the fallen world, not the kingdom. He is the governor of a graveyard. God has restricted his jurisdiction to the dust so that he cannot infect the heavens again. It is a quarantine, and we are simply passing through his zone.
Passing through? We are born in the zone. You admit he rules our environment. If God restricted him to the earth, then God explicitly handed the title deed of our home to the dragon. That makes the suffering of history a divine ordinance.
The Creator handed the exile the deed to the ruins, Dr. Vance, not the restoration. The serpent rules the decay, but he does not rule the life that rises out of it. The restriction ensures that while he can bite the heel, he can never again touch the crown.
The arguments for Exhibit A have been entered into the record. Exhibit B, the diet. Juror, the court warns you against the comfort of minimalism. Do not dismiss the menu as a metaphor, just to sleep better at night. Dr. Vance, the court demands you justify the sustenance of the enemy without appealing to ancient superstitions. You have 3 minutes.
Dr. Finch wants you to see humiliation, but the ancient Near East demands we look at function. In the ancient world, dust is not just dirt. It is the culinary ecosystem of the netherworld. I direct your attention to the evidence board. We must look at the mythological parallel. In the Descent of Ishtar, the underworld is described as a place where dust is their fare and clay is their food. By sentencing the serpent to eat dust, God is not just making him dirty. The judge is legally assigning the prisoner the food of the dead. Since Adam and Eve are now mortal, returning to dust, the serpent is being granted the right to consume humanity. This is not humiliation, it is predation rights.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. Dr. Finch, you will now dissect this position. You have 3 minutes.
Dr. Vance presents a ghastly theory, but she ignores the idiom. The phrase, "dust shalt thou eat," is the ultimate revocation of pride, not a menu. It is an idiom of total defeat. I direct your attention to the evidence board. In the Psalms, enemies lick the dust. It is the posture of the conquered. God is forcing the serpent to taste his own failure every moment of his existence. The serpent promised the humans they would be gods, but his deception only led them back to the dust. Now God forces the serpent to feed on the very substance of his failure. It is a cycle of reminder. He is not a predator, Dr. Vance. He is a scavenger.
The initial cases for Exhibit B have been presented. The advocates will now engage in a 4-minute scholarly interchange. Dr. Finch, you will initiate the interchange.
Dr. Vance, your predation theory turns the Creator into a monster who feeds his children to the dogs. The dust represents the futility of a life without God. The serpent feeds on death because that is all he produces. He is the Lord of nothing. God is limiting his diet to the chaff of the harvest.
Chaff? You are talking about human beings. Dust thou art. The text proves a transfer of essence. The serpent grows strong on the mortality of man. This explains why the war never ends, because the enemy is fed by our destruction. The Creator sanctioned this cycle of consumption.
He sanctioned the limit of it. You are missing the boundary. If the serpent eats dust, he cannot eat life. God is drawing a line in the sand. The serpent can have the old man, the flesh, the mortality, the sin, but he cannot touch the new life that God will breathe back into the dust. It is a quarantine of evil.
It is not a quarantine. It is a threshing floor for evil. The serpent produces death and then is fed by it. It is a self-sustaining engine of suffering. If God were truly good in the safe sense, he would have starved the beast, not fed it.
He is starving the beast. He is starving it of glory. The serpent wanted to be God. Now he is an eater of dirt. That is starvation. You are confusing the vessel with the cargo. He consumes the shell of the man, but he cannot touch the soul.
And if the shell is all we have for 70 years, then for 70 years we are prey. You are offering spiritual safety while the physical world is being devoured. A good shepherd kills the wolf. He doesn't just sign a treaty limiting the wolf to eating the sheep's legs.
He didn't sign a treaty. He issued a death warrant. The eating of dust is temporary. The serpent is eating his last meal, Dr. Vance. It is the final gorging of a condemned prisoner before the execution.
A last meal that has lasted 6,000 years? That is not an execution, Alistair. That is a banquet.
The arguments for Exhibit B are now on the record. Exhibit C, the Protocol. Juror, weigh the cost of this theology. If Dr. Finch is right, are you complicit in the violence of the cure? Dr. Finch, the court demands you reconcile the promise of victory without ignoring the guarantee of the wound. You have 3 minutes.
Genesis chapter 3 verse 15 is known throughout history as the first gospel. It is the singular ray of light in the darkness. I direct your attention to the evidence board. We must look at the asymmetry of the strike. God declares enmity. He puts a wall of hostility between the woman and the serpent to prevent a second alliance. But look at the outcome. The serpent strikes the heel, a painful but non-fatal wound. The seed of the woman strikes the head, a fatal, crushing blow. This is the promise of the Messiah. God is prophesying that a future son will destroy the serpent once and for all. This is not a war. It is a victory announcement.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Dr. Vance, you will now dissect this position. You have 3 minutes.
Dr. Finch hears a gospel. I hear a blood feud. The text uses the exact same verb for both actions. It is reciprocal violence. I direct your attention to the evidence board. We must analyze the cyclical nature of the verb. The translation, crush versus bruise, is a theological bias added later. The text says, "He will strike you and you will strike him." This is not a promised victory. It is a declaration of perpetual war. God is not ending the conflict, He is institutionalizing it. He guarantees that every generation of seed will be locked in mortal combat with the dragon. This is not a rescue mission, Juror. It is the drafting of humanity into an eternal cosmic war. God establishes a protocol of reciprocal ruin. The heel cannot kill the snake without stepping into the mouth. The victory requires the suicide of the champion.
The initial cases for Exhibit C have been presented. The advocates will now engage in a 4-minute scholarly interchange. Dr. Vance, you will initiate the interchange.
Dr. Finch, enmity is hatred. God explicitly states, I will put enmity. He is the author of the hate. He creates a state of war between the species. If this was a gospel, He would have separated them. Instead, He binds them together in a death spiral. Heel and head, forever locked in combat.
The enmity is the grace, Dr. Vance. Without the enmity, humanity would have merged with the serpent. We would have become purely anti-wisdom. By instilling a supernatural hatred for evil, God preserved our humanity. The war keeps us alive. If we stopped fighting, we would be consumed.
So the good news is that we are conscripted soldiers? You are admitting that God designed a system that requires violence to function. The seed is born to fight. This redefines the human purpose from gardeners to warriors. It changes the genre of the Bible from a love letter to a casualty list.
We live in a fallen world, Dr. Vance. The genre is war, but you ignore the crushed skull. The seed does not just fight, he crushes. The violence has a terminus. There is a final champion who ends the cycle. You are looking at the battle. I am looking at the outcome.
I am looking at the casualties. Thousands of years of heel strikes, suffering, poison, death, waiting for this crushed skull. A benevolent general does not let the war rage for millennia just to prove a point. The protocol of Genesis chapter 3, verse 15 ensures that history is a slaughterhouse.
The alternative to the slaughterhouse is the mass grave. Without the enmity, the serpent wins everything. Better a bloody war that leads to freedom than a peaceful extinction. God did not hand His children knives and say, good luck. He promised them a champion.
He promised a champion who would also be bitten. Look at the text. Thou shalt bruise his heel. The protocol requires the Savior to be poisoned. God designed a rescue that demands the mutilation of His own agent. That is not grace, Alistair. That is filicide.
It is not filicide, it is atonement. And that is the difference between a general and a father. A general sends troops to die. A father dies for the troops. The heel strike proves that God is willing to bleed to win the war.
The arguments for Exhibit C have been entered into the record. The formal presentation of cases is complete. We now enter the cross-examination. The curator from the archive has been monitoring the deliberations and selected 3 critical inquiries from the jury. Our first inquiry is from juror Dr. Elena Rossi in Bologna, Italy, who asks, Dr. Vance, if the curse was a containment protocol to trap the serpent on earth, why did God leave the gate open for the exile to access the divine counsel again in the book of Job? Dr. Vance.
A devastating observation. It proves the containment failed, or worse, that the ban was porous by design. If the serpent acts as the accuser in Job, he still holds ritual access. This proves the earthly curse was not a total revocation of power, but a change of station. He is the scout now, roaming the earth, but reporting back to the throne.
Dr. Finch, your assessment.
Dr. Vance confuses access with authority. In Job, the accuser cannot touch a hair on Job's head without permission. The curse stripped him of his sovereignty. He may still be able to report, but he can no longer rule. He is on a leash. The eating of dust signifies that he serves only at the pleasure of the king.
The next inquiry is from Juror Caleb Thorne in Chicago, USA, who asks, Dr. Finch, you claim the seed is the Messiah, but the text uses terms for both the serpent's seed and the woman's seed. Does this mean there is a literal genetic bloodline of the serpent walking among us? Dr. Finch.
A chilling question. But the seed is spiritual, not biological. The seed of the serpent are those who embrace the anti-wisdom of the dragon, the brood of vipers, as John the Baptist called them. It is a lineage of allegiance. The war is between those who carry the spirit of the Creator and those who carry the venom of the destroyer.
Dr. Vance, your assessment.
Spiritualizing the text is the oldest trick in the book, Alistair. The text uses the exact same word for both. If the woman's seed is biological, the serpent's seed implies a biological reality too. The ancient world believed in hybridity, the giants. The text hints that the serpent has a physical legion, not just a philosophy.
Our concluding inquiry is from Juror Chen in Singapore, who asks, if God cursed the ground after cursing the serpent, why is the serpent's food, dust, linked to the ground? Did God curse the earth to feed the snake? Dr. Finch.
That implies a conspiracy where none exists. God cursed the ground to limit human autonomy, to make toil necessary. The serpent eats dust because he is the master of that toil. The connection shows that sin corrupts the natural order. The ground, the man, and the snake are all tied together in a knot of futility until the Redeemer unties it.
It is
Dr.
not
Vance,
a conspiracy.
your assessment.
It is an ecosystem. God curses the snake to eat dust. Then he curses the ground to become dust. He cultivates the harvest for the eater. Juror Chen is right. The destruction of the earth feeds the appetite of the dragon. The system is rigged to sustain the enemy.
The cross-examination is concluded. The testimony is preserved. We now transfer custody of the investigation to the curator in the archive for the forensic profile.
Juror, we must question the timeline of the crime. Tradition places the fall at the moment of the bite. But if we apply the strict standards set by Jesus in Matthew chapter 5, the timeline shifts. He argues that the crime is committed in the heart before the hand moves. Apply this to the tree. The text records that before the woman ate, she saw that it was good. She desired it. In that split second, did Eve sit in judgment of God? Was the bite the sin, Juror? Or was it merely the evidence of a defection that had already occurred? And if the defect was internal, we must examine the construction of the vessel. Remember, she was not born in sin, but was she truly forged in perfection by the Creator himself? We must test the integrity of the design. For this vessel possessed the immediate capacity to judge its maker. We must ask, was this a structural failure or a design feature? Did the Creator intentionally build the hidden gate of treason into the human heart? Is the capacity to doubt a structural flaw or the entire point? And if the design was rigged, we must question the justice of the sentence. The crime was committed thousands of years ago by two people you never met, yet you serve their time. You did not eat the fruit, but you inherited the war. You inherited the dust. Is this justice, or is it inherited debt? Consider the enemy. Paul identifies him in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, not as a squatter, but as the god of this world. If the Creator allows the enemy to hold that title, how can you be expected to win? If Adam and Eve failed in paradise, what chance do you have in the ruins? Are you fighting a war or just waiting to be eaten?
But we must also trace the circuit of the curse. Verse 14, the serpent is sentenced to eat dust. Verse 19, humanity is sentenced to return to dust. The verdict is precise. Dust thou art. Juror, do not look away from the implication. If the serpent eats dust, and you are dust, then you are the meal. We must ask, did God simply punish Adam, or did he explicitly place humanity on the serpent's menu? This redefines the purpose of your mortality. Is your death simply entropy, or is it a transaction? Did God curse the ground to ensure the enemy would never go hungry?
Juror, before we seal the record, look at the behavior of the accused. During the interrogation, the record is loud with blame. The man points to the woman points to the serpent. But the moment the judge begins to read the sentence, the room goes silent. There is no rebuttal written in the text, no plea for mercy, no defense. We must ask, why? Why does the voice that challenged the Creator suddenly offer no argument? Is this the silence of a prisoner accepting his guilt, or is it the silence of a general receiving his assignment? God does not offer a negotiation. He issues a decree of war. He says, I will put enmity. We must ask, why is hatred the gift? We must question the nature of the gift. Tradition preaches that peace is the ultimate virtue, but here, in the shadow of the tree, the Creator commands war. Why? Is it possible that peace with the dragon is the ultimate death? If God had left Adam and Eve in peace, would the humans have surrendered? Would the outcasts have become the serpent's chattel? So we must ask, is the war the only thing keeping us human? And if we are the food, we must examine the mechanics of the rescue. Consider the heel. We focus on the crushed head, but look at the anatomy of the strike. To crush the head of the eater, the heel must step into the mouth. It implies that the victory cannot be won from a safe distance. The champion must feed himself to the beast to destroy it.
This forces us to confront the cost of the system. Did God design a rescue that requires the poisoning of the Savior? Is the venom part of the victory? And now, we must prosecute the delay. The promise of the crushed head was given at the very beginning. Yet the war has raged for millennia. Every day the sun rises, the serpent is allowed to eat. Every generation is fed into the conflict. We must ask, why? If the Creator has the power to end the war instantly, why does he choose to let it continue?
Is the suffering of history a necessary cost? Or has the judge simply abandoned the courtroom? Does the Creator allow the serpent to rule because the king cannot stop the rebel? Or because the war serves a purpose we are too terrified to admit? The investigation continues.
The forensic profile is entered into the record. I affirm that this proceeding within the scholarly sanctum has been conducted with uncompromising forensic rigor. The burden of judgment now shifts to you, the jury. Juror, the court reminds you, you are not voting on your preference. You are voting on the evidence. Silence is an abdication of your duty. Here is the charge to the jury. You will file your findings in the deliberation room, the comment section below. Charge number 1. The verdict on the system. Regarding Exhibit A, is the curse an act of ritual humiliation protecting the cosmic order, Finch, or is it prison architecture that locks the hostile power in the room with us, Vance? Charge number 2. The verdict on the diet. Regarding Exhibit B, is eating dust an idiom of defeat, Finch, or does it legally grant the serpent predation rights over mortality, Vance? Charge number 3. The verdict on the method. Regarding Exhibit C, is the first gospel a victory announcement, Finch, or the institutionalization of reciprocal ruin, Vance? Charge number 4. The verdict on divine complicity. If God commanded enmity, creating the war, is he the author of the violence? We demand your verdict on the necessity of the gift of hatred. Charge number 5. Your verdict. After weighing the evidence, cast your final vote. Is Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, a promise or a prison? This investigation demands the same rigor of itself that it applies to the text. You are not bound by the arguments presented. If you find the logic of the advocates or even the charges themselves to be fractured, file your dissent in the deliberation room, the comment section below. The foundational sources can be found in the case file section of the video description for your own continued investigation. The record is now sealed. Case GN-03.14 is permanently open for deliberation. Enter your verdict below.